Hello, Lindsay Price here, and I am with
Krista Boehnert.
Krista Boehnert. Krista is one of our wonderful playwrights. We're going to be talking about her play, Puzzle Pieces. Krista, tell everybody where in the world you are right now.
I'm in Victoria, BC right now.
Victoria, BC. So you're on the other side of Canada, fellow Canadian, which we love. And Krista, we were just talking about, you've been with us for a long time. Do you remember when Puzzle Pieces was published? I can
That's a
find you.
good question. I'm going to just guess maybe like 2001, 2002, something like that.
2003. I
Oh,
didn't
okay.
realize it was that long ago. So Chris has been a theater folk playwright for, do the math, 10, 15, 16 years.
Wow.
Krista.
Is there a prize for that?
I think that's amazing. And you have also written, we're going to be talking about Puzzle Pieces, but you have written a couple of other plays for us. We have You Heard, which is also written in the same format that Puzzle Pieces is written in, and that's a monologue form, and we're going to talk about that specifically. So with Puzzle Pieces, it's a very unique play, Krista, because it is written strictly in monologue. And can you just talk about that? Like, why did you choose the monologue form to share this story?
Probably a couple of reasons. I really liked the experimental format of it. I'm a huge fan of one-person plays. So I thought, how can I take that intimacy that a single character has with an audience and bring that into more of an ensemble piece? So that was sort of the idea behind Puzzle Pieces. And in this piece, the monologues don't intersect. So that's a little bit of a difference between it and some of my other works, where the characters tend to be talking about a same topic and you get to see different perspectives. This one, it tends to be they're all on their solo journeys, but they kind of coalesce around some themes.
Yeah, the characters are, yes, that's a great way to put it. So Puzzle Pieces looks at teen life. And it's the whole notion that they're all like singular puzzle pieces, trying to figure it out, trying to put their own puzzle together. That's how you would describe it?
Absolutely, yes, that's how I would put it for sure.
And that's something that I think it's remarkable that this was written in 2003, because I look at this play and the themes that are happening in this play are happening today. Like we still haven't figured out, secret, spoiler alert, I don't think anyone is ever going to figure it out, what being a teenager is like and how to put that puzzle together, right?
Right, absolutely. Well, and it's interesting because I reread the play myself preparing for this, and so obviously I'm looking at it from a much different perspective 16 years later, like you mentioned. And even for myself, I'm like, oh, I'm still struggling with my own puzzle. And I think that might be partially why the play still feels relevant to teens today, but also to the audiences that they're performing it for. I think we're all putting together our puzzle piece, and it's more of a lifelong endeavor than I probably even realized when I originally wrote the piece.
I just think that it's pretty remarkable. It's a small cast piece, which is, we have a lot of schools that are looking for I have to put 50 kids on stage, but I think this is I think this is a really great classroom piece, when students are being split up into groups, because it is so much about character. And then you have to figure out the staging. You have to figure out how you're going to present these monologues. And what are your suggestions on that, in terms of staging puzzle pieces?
I think there's so many different ways you can go about it. So it can absolutely be a solitary performance, kind of like what people would picture, when they think of a Shakespearean soliloquy, where you've got that, the single actor performing their piece in isolation. But this one really does lend itself to having the rest of the ensemble cast come in and support the person who is speaking. So whether they're actually physically interacting with the person who's delivering the monologue is absolutely an option, or they can be performing, pantomiming out some of the actions that the person is talking about off to the side and just staging it a little bit differently that way. I do think it also lends itself to different styles of that interaction, whether you decide to incorporate, a bit of video, or like it could even lend itself to puppets. Honestly, I think the sky's the limit with this one, from my perspective, in terms of how you could stage it.
Oh, I love that, because I think that, we have been going down a road, particularly with musicals, where because there's so much on YouTube these days. You can basically see how things have been staged, and it always boggles my mind, but it happens quite a lot about how the things are just being copied. And I really like leaving it up to the producing body to kind of be creative with how they're going to stage something, and to have something like this where I just love the idea of video. Like, you could have a video section where your larger group of students are working on how do we visualize what's happening in these monologues or behind these monologues. Like, I think a perfect example, so one of the characters is named Jamie, and he has this monologue about how he's basically going to get kicked off the football team if he shows up drunk to one more practice. That's one of it. It's all about pressures and the pressure season. Again, an incredibly relevant topic right now, this pressure that students are under. So I can totally see there's a football a video, or something happening underneath as this monologue is being played.
Absolutely, yeah. I think his character in particular really lends itself to that, whether it's football players practice or game footage, or there's a lot of different ways I think you could incorporate a lot of the digital elements that would come very naturally to students, and then you would have opportunities for a larger student participation beyond the cast members on stage.
And then we have the character of Jen, who has this wonderful comedic monologue where she's talking to God and about how there's only 3 weeks to prom. That's not much time, right?
Talk.
And I can just see the visuals that could come with this. I think that sometimes people get stuck. They see a monologue and they see one person talking, so they just make it one person talking, don't they?
It's true, and it is daunting. I mean, when you're looking at the script, you're like, okay, there's a monologue, there's another monologue. So I can appreciate how it's very overwhelming. But one of the things I think, my biggest takeaway is, that flexibility with the staging and experimenting with it. But I think there's also on the character development side a lot of opportunity to experiment too. Just the way the monologues are crafted, they can be done very soft, where a person's not, exhibiting much anger, or the exact same words can be performed in a way where they're actually exhibiting a lot of anger. There's a really big scope for actors to dive into these characters and decide how exactly they want to present them. So that experimentation, I hope, would translate both to the stage and the character development.
And that's the second thing where you read my mind, that this would make a perfect class project because of the character development that needs to happen, where, again, it's all about puzzle pieces. So we're not seeing all the pieces of these characters' lives. We're seeing the snapshots. And so there are a lot of pieces that need to be filled in, that could be filled in with video moments, that could be filled in with character profiles. What are the family lives like of these characters? Do they have siblings? Does it mention siblings? How do we analyze the text to get the most information, but then fill in the blanks? Like, what is their living situation like for these characters? Who are their friends? Where do these pieces that we see in the text, where do they come from? Again, what a wonderful analysis opportunity for actors, for student directors. I think this would be a good student director piece. What do you think?
I agree. I think, again, I think there's probably a little bit of that daunting aspect to it as a student director, but I think because the topics are so relatable, and I think they are open, a student director might be more open to taking some unusual risks that someone who's a drama teacher or has a bit more of a pedigree behind them might be a little more reluctant to take. I think they would really embrace the opportunity to try something completely different with the text and see where their fellow students take the piece.
Mm-hmm. And the last piece, I think, too, would be in the set design. This is another thing, which is there's not a lot of, there isn't any information that we give, and I think that's on purpose.
It was,
yeah, there's so many lines that when I look at this script, there's so many lines that come out, which would be really interesting to visualize. And we don't just have the images of the puzzle pieces, but I just was looking at, so Vicky is another character, and one of her monologues, the first thing she says is, if I were to describe myself in 2 words, they would be young and angry.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at that, I'm like, oh, 2003, they're all young and angry now, with good reason,
Absolutely.
What do you think, why is it, do you think this piece is so universal?
I think it's those universal themes that we all grapple with. One of the questions I think you had asked earlier was about, that theme of growing up. But I think we all want it to be picture perfect and have all these puzzle pieces like perfectly aligned. And the reality is it's just so much more messy than that. And so I think it's just that universal feeling of life experience, and you're trying to figure it all out and you don't quite know the answers and no one else seems to, but you sort of feel like they might, and just trying to navigate those themes that you're experiencing of things like being young and angry, and how do you make that difference? How do you make your voice heard when sometimes you might be dismissed just by virtue alone of how old you are, right? So I think it's something that teenagers, regardless of the era they grew up in, definitely can relate to that experience.
I think that this is, and when we talk about putting something on like this in a class, I think the reflection possibility, like, what was life like in 2003 when this was written and these characters came to life, and how has it changed for teenagers? What hasn't changed? Like if these teenagers they all would be, let's see, 17, 27, in their 30s now.
It's true, yes.
And I look at them and I think, and what I think is really nice is, and you can contradict me or you can correct me, I don't think there's a lot of technology use in this play.
There isn't, no.
Yeah, I think that's the key too, is because there's nothing that dates this play. And that's what makes it among the many reasons that makes it so special. And I haven't said it all. You can go to theaterfield.com and you can read sample pages of this amazing play and bring it to your students and have them read and have them have conversations about what it means to be a teenager, and use these monologues to as discussion points. I think that would be a really wonderful opportunity to take that. Yes.
I was just going to say, and I agree with you, I think in addition to discussion points, the reason it's so effective in the classroom is the monologues and characters that they encounter while they're diving into the piece. They're also a really great jumping off point. I think they can do the character development, and then they can take those characters forward, whether they take them forward into adulthood or just what's happening 5 minutes from now. I really think this piece allows them to explore those characters in a way that they can really grow and develop them, and then it can be turned into a playwright piece as well. So it's got a lot of learning opportunities, I think, inherent with it, in addition to the theatrical element to it.
Well, and Krista, that is the mark of something of a good piece, because not only is it theatrical, not only does it qualify as an interesting theatrical experience, which is one of the things we're always looking for, but that possibility of more. Use it as an example for character development. Use it as an example for exploring improvs and what's going to happen to them 5 minutes after this play is over. Use it as the beginning, as a playwriting exercise, and have students write their own monologues from where they are.
Absolutely.
And it's something that it's important to have have examples and to have models sometimes, you know. I think occasionally we don't like to. We love to throw things at students, but we throw things at students and they just they don't have the same experience with them and they falter, and then they automatically assume that they can't do it.
Yes.
And that is something which is it breaks my heart, because like it's I think that more than anyone, teenagers really have an ability to express themselves in a theatrical form.
I agree. And I think giving them that positive, you know, first experience will just allow them to grow and flourish from there. It's having that initial positive experience that allows them to go on and do that. And this might be a strange thing for a playwright to say, because for me, obviously, you know, love to see it performed, love to see students sink their teeth into it and see that curtain go up. But in terms of the classroom element to it, that's really where I feel this piece is meant for, and where it would really shine, is to give students that opportunity to have that first experience, and like me, fall in love with, you know, one person plays and then take it off from there. So yeah, just using it within the classroom as that learning experience and giving them the chance to like dip their toe in a safe space where they can take a character that, you know, some of the work's already been done, and then they can move it a little further, and then maybe next time they'll try creating a character from scratch. Those are the kinds of things that I think puzzle pieces really can lend itself in the drama classroom.
I agree 100%. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for talking to me today. Thank you much for sharing your wonderful play, and just sharing your insight into I agree. This is the classroom is such a really great space to explore these characters, explore the story, explore puzzle pieces. You guys should go to theaterfolk.com and you make sure that you get the wonderful experience that we know about Krista and puzzle pieces. Thanks, Krista.
Thank you.